Okay. I actually just watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with my oldest child for the first time this weekend. And I thought this is like the perfect image to use for this discussion about making a big change in your life to switching over to independent game development. So there's my Indiana Jones reference. Anyway, so let's talk about this leap of faith. Why did I personally take the leap of faith from working in AAA games? So I had like a really good career going as a senior level games artist. The last full-time job that I had was at 2K, working as a cinematic artist and a video editor, animator on a variety of projects. Had a really good salary. I had benefits. I had pretty decent completion bonuses. And I was also very unusually working remotely. So I was able to get 2K to allow me to work remotely from the Midwest, which was amazing because it was a very easy place to live, right? Very inexpensive. So every time I went back to 2K, my coworkers would give me a hard time about how I was living in a really cheap part of the country compared to Marin County. So I had a really good thing going, but I think the main reason why I decided to leave is I had this sort of growing sense of unease creatively. And I think that's a pretty common thing with artists, especially who have been working on studio projects and essentially working on other people's visions, right? So for, at the time, 12 years, I had been working on other people's creative ideas, other people's visions, executing their ideas and sort of being a yes man, which in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that because that's what you're getting paid to do, is to execute someone else's vision. But basically, I had my own ideas that had been brewing for a long time. I had been working really hard to develop my skills, my artistic skills, my communication skills, leadership. I'd been in a number of leadership positions. So I felt I had this really strong calling to basically do my own thing. So another thing that worked out really well is I ended up getting my full-time teaching job offer from Notre Dame in 2012. So that was a very unique sort of opportunity for me that I'll be talking about a little bit later when we talk about finances, planning out your financial life. But essentially I had a full-time teaching salary and had benefits and stuff. I have a wife, I have 3 kids. So it was sort of a combination of what I have on the screen is creative soul drain, not soul train, soul drain, and my teaching job coming together. And then, I think like if you want to get into independent games development, you're essentially going to be an entrepreneur. So you have to have like this very strong leaning towards adventure, right? Stepping into the unknown, into realms that you've never explored before. Not only creatively, but from a business development standpoint, marketing, PR, there's just a million things that you have to do that you probably I had never done before. So I just said, what the heck? I didn't want to have any regrets. And I know that your previous speaker was mentioning about not having regrets as well. I had the same thing. I said, you know what? I feel like this is the right time. I've got all my skills. Everything's in place. Why not just go for it? So that's the reason why I took the leap of faith. And what I want to sort of ask the viewers, the folks on Twitch who are watching, who are thinking about doing this is, why do you want to make an indie game? What are your motivations? So I think it's really important to step back and give serious thought to this. All right, so I've got a couple things listed out. Fortune and Glory, another Indiana Jones reference. If you want to make a lot of money and become famous and live in a mansion like Notch does, right? Because he was an indie game developer, right? I suggest definitely pursuing another career because you're probably not going to make a lot of money making indie games, at least not on the first go around. Making indie games is incredibly challenging. And the thing is you'll receive very little in the way of like financial compensation, rewards, any accolades along the way until you get like really close to the end and you've got something really good and you're thinking about shipping, or until really after you've shipped your game and it's really good, like world class. Then all of those things could potentially come your way, like some financial gain, some people knowing who you are, I guess, in the industry. But if that's what your main goal is, I would probably not suggest making an indie game. But if you're really into it for personal growth, to learn a lot, to challenge yourself, to see what's possible, to see what you're actually capable of achieving, and if you have like this really strong creative vision for a game, and you feel like, damn it, like if I don't do this, I cannot live another day. If you have sort of that burning passion and desire within you, I think making an indie game is something you should consider, because you're really going to need to use every ounce of knowledge and skill and really fortitude to complete your game, to make it to the finish line. So I would suggest that any of you thinking about doing this really give a lot of thought to those, to what your motivations are. Okay, so sizing yourself up. I was looking for images for my presentation, and I just saw those two, and I'm like, and the funny thing is there's really nice green grass on the top one. So I think a lot of, especially studio developers, think, the grass is greener literally on the other side. So I want to leave and make an indie game. So that's how you sort of imagine yourself waking up in your, working in your underwear in your home office every day, the look of relaxation. But in reality, you're going to be more like the woman on the bottom there. But anyway, what I want to talk about is sort of taking a good hard look at yourself and sizing yourself up before you take the leap of faith into independent game development. And the first question to sort of ask yourself is, are you a hobbyist or a pro? Are you a hobbyist or a pro game developer? So if you're a hobbyist, you're making games for fun or for a learning exercise. Maybe you're doing it at night or on the weekends. You're putting in a couple hours a week, but it's like a part-time thing. And your full-time job is your focus in life is basically something else. If you're a pro, you're doing game development in some fashion full-time. So you're either doing it as a full-time job. Maybe you're a student at a university in a game or an animation program. But when you think of yourself as a pro, it's like you're working on this stuff religiously. Your end goal is to make and finish a game and actually release it commercially to an audience of people who will actually play it and give you feedback, whether that's good or bad. You're putting something into the world. You're making yourself vulnerable. So you have to sort of ask yourself, am I a hobbyist or am I a pro? And then once you've answered that question, you can set your expectations accordingly. So what exactly does that mean? If you're a hobbyist, actually, I think that's fine. You just have to realize that the chances of creating a game that's going to go on Steam and sell hundreds of thousands of copies to critical and commercial acclaim is probably going to be really slim, just because the competition is really extremely tight, right, in this space. And this is honestly even really hard to achieve as a professional game developer. But if you're a pro, I wish I could say it's going to be easier because you have a wider set of skills or more experience or something. But honestly, even if you're a pro developer and you're trying to make an indie game, the chances of finding success are pretty slim. Because you're sort of facing uphill challenges every step of the way, whether it's with development or just trying to do your daily work. But there's all this other stuff like marketing and PR and business development and legal stuff, going to trade shows, trying to just get people to notice what you're doing. Each one of those steps along the path is really tough. So that's what I mean by set your expectations accordingly. If you're a hobbyist, you're probably not going to make a lot of money. If you're a pro, there's a little bit more of a chance that you may, make some money someday. And the next point is, what are your skills and strengths? Be honest with yourself. You want to identify, what are you actually good at? If you're a student right now, maybe you're not good at anything. Or at very little. And I think that's actually okay, because that's why you are a student. You are working hard to get good at something or a few things. But if you're a pro or if you're a hobbyist, look at yourself and say, hey, if you're like a brilliant programmer, but you can't draw a stick figure, you're going to need to find an artist to work with on your project. Or let's say you're like a really talented modeler or concept artist. You're going to need to find an artist, an animator, and a programmer. Bare minimum. So you want to be honest with yourself and basically say, what are my skills? And then you say, okay, I need to find at least one other person to complement my skill set. These are like the first sort of steps that you want to take when you're thinking about making an indie game. And then really what you want to do is try to put together a team, right? Which sounds like it should be a really simple thing to do, but actually building a team with complementary skill sets as your own is a really difficult thing. And actually, heck, the challenges of making a game start before you've even started making your game. And I've actually talked to quite a few friends who are at the studios who want to make a game, and they're like, well, I can't find anybody who wants to, my friends all have kids and stuff, and like none of them are going to leave their full-time job to work on an indie game for 3 or 4 years without any pay. So building that team, you really need to keep your team as small as possible. But you also need to find that other partner or partners for your development that are really committed, are as committed as you are. I would highly suggest avoiding working with people who are only able to work on an indie game on the weekends, because your game is never going to finish. So don't rush into that. Find someone who's really committed. Keep your team small. You'll move faster. It'll be easier to communicate and actually get your job done if you keep your team small. And then lastly, before you decide to go indie, you want to get as much professional experience as possible. And when I say professional experience, that really means working at any job. So like, get out of your parents' basement. If you're currently living there, you have to take steps into being an adult in some way, shape, or form. So any job that you can get that's in an office, working with other people, where you are learning how to actually do work, to actually start something and complete it on time, learning how to set goals and hitting your goals, learning how to communicate with other people, learning how to just be a really good person. All of those things you learn in a professional environment. So I would highly recommend, if some of you are in high school and you're like, the heck with this, I'm just going to make my indie game. If you've got a great idea, go for it. But the more professional experience, the more adulthood you experience, the better positioned you will be to make a game and actually be able to finish it.